Kellen Voss was used to silence, the kind that came with working in the outskirts of the galaxy, in a small mining colony far from the heart of interstellar politics and war. His job was simple: repair and build advanced technology, fix the machines that kept the colony running. He didn't need to be a part of the larger galactic story. In fact, he preferred it that way. The vast, chaotic wars fought between the galaxy's factions didn't interest him. He was just an engineer, content with his quiet life and the hum of machines. His routine was shattered one evening when a distress signal crackled through his comms. The signal wasn't from any known ally or military faction, but that wasn't unusual in the fringes of space. But what did catch his attention was the urgency in the voice that followed the signal. "I need your help, engineer. My ship has been damaged in the war. I require immediate assistance." The voice was steady, calm, almost too calm. There was a certain authority to it that Kellen couldn't ignore. He sighed, setting down his tools. The last thing he needed was a war casualty on his doorstep, yet he knew it was probably the right thing to do. People in need rarely came this far out to the mining colonies unless they were desperate. Kellen walked over to the airlock, and when the doors opened, a woman stepped inside, her tall form framed by the dim light of the station. She wore a military uniform that was more advanced than anything Kellen had seen before. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto his with intensity. "Engineer Kellen Voss?" she asked, her voice strong but with a hint of exhaustion. There were traces of blood on her uniform, and though her movements were precise, there was a weariness to her. "That's me," Kellen replied, eyeing her warily. "You're a soldier." "I am," she answered curtly. "Lyra Keen, I need your help. The ship I came in was critically damaged. If you don't assist me, I may not make it back to my forces." The name Lyra Keen meant nothing to Kellen, but something about her demeanor made him take her seriously. She was no ordinary soldier. There was an air of command about her, a presence that commanded respect even in this cold, isolated station. He led her to his workshop. "Let's see what we're working with." Her ship, a sleek vessel designed for high-speed combat, had a gash running down its side. The damage was more than superficial. It was deep, cutting into vital systems. But Kellen wasn't fazed. He had repaired worse in his time. As he worked, Lyra stood to the side, watching him with quiet focus. She never asked for anything more than what she needed, and yet there was an air of authority to her presence. Kellen could tell she was used to giving orders, not receiving them. It made him curious. Who was she really? Over the next few hours, Kellen worked tirelessly, patching up the ship's hull and fixing its internal systems. Lyra didn't speak much, only offering the occasional instruction on what parts needed replacing or how certain systems had to be recalibrated. There was no room for small talk, but there was an unspoken connection between them as the work continued. As the repairs neared completion, Kellen found himself intrigued by her calm, collected manner. Most soldiers he had met were loud, brash, quick to bark orders, but Lyra was different. She moved with purpose, yet never wasted emotion. It was as though she knew exactly how to survive in a galaxy where chaos ruled. Finally, after hours of work, the ship was ready. Kellen wiped his hands on a rag, his back sore from bending over the machine. "It's good to go," he said, standing back to admire his work. Lyra stepped forward, inspecting the ship with a quick, practiced gaze. "Thank you," she said simply. "Just doing my job," Kellen replied with a shrug. But something about the way she stood there, staring at the ship, made him think she wasn't just a soldier. "Where are you headed next?" he asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Back to the front lines," Lyra said, but there was something unreadable in her expression. "There's a lot at stake right now." As she turned to leave, Kellen noticed something odd. A ship of that caliber didn't just belong to any soldier. It wasn't just a tool of war, it was a symbol of power. The insignia on her uniform, although partially hidden by the jacket, was unfamiliar, but there was an undeniable weight to it. Before she stepped out the door, Kellen stopped her. "Lyra, can I ask you something?" She paused and looked back at him, her gaze steady. "Go ahead." "I've worked on a lot of ships and I've met a lot of soldiers," Kellen began slowly, "but you're different. You carry yourself like someone more important than just a soldier. Who are you really?" Lyra hesitated, her expression flickering briefly before returning to its neutral state. "I am just a soldier, Kellen, a soldier with a mission." Kellen wasn't convinced, but he didn't press. She had already given him more than he had expected. As she left the station, Kellen found himself watching her ship ascend into the starry expanse. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. She wasn't just a soldier. There was something in the way she carried herself, something in the way she had spoken that hinted at a deeper truth. The next few days passed in a blur. Kellen went back to his routine, fixing machines, maintaining systems, and keeping to himself. But his mind kept returning to Lyra. Something about her didn't add up. He tried to shake the feeling. Maybe she was just a high-ranking officer. He had worked with many of them before. But none of them had looked at him like she had, with a sense of quiet authority that suggested there was more at play. It wasn't just her rank, it was her presence. A week passed when the answer came in the form of an unexpected message. The comm screen lit up with a message from an encrypted source, its sender masked behind layers of security protocols. But Kellen's heart skipped a beat when he saw the name attached to the message: Lyra Keene. The message was short, direct, and contained only a few words. "I need to speak with you. It's important. Meet me at the coordinates I've sent." Kellen stared at the message, confusion and curiosity battling inside him. He had helped her once. What more did she want? But deep down, he knew it wasn't just about the ship. It was about something bigger. He didn't waste time thinking it over. Whatever it was, he was about to find out. Kellen's heart raced as he approached the coordinates Lyra had sent him. He had been deep in thought ever since he received the encrypted message. It was rare for someone like Lyra to reach out again, and the urgency in her words was enough to make him drop everything and prepare for whatever came next. The journey took him through uncharted space, far away from the familiar sights of his mining colony. His ship, an old freighter, hummed quietly as it glided through the stars. The small lights of distant systems flickered around him, but he was focused only on the navigation system, following the exact coordinates Lyra had given him. When he finally arrived at the location, he saw nothing but darkness. The stars looked distant here, as though they were obscured by a thick veil. His sensors didn't pick up anything unusual, but something about the area felt off. He hesitated for a moment but then pushed forward, trusting Lyra's words. Just as he was beginning to wonder if he had been led astray, a large ship appeared out of the void, its silhouette cutting through the blackness of space like a shadow. It was immense, much larger than anything Kellen had ever seen before. Its hull gleamed with a dark, polished sheen, almost like a moving fortress. Lyra's ship. He was certain of it now. As he moved closer, a docking port opened, and he carefully guided his ship inside. The airlock sealed with a soft hiss, and he stepped out of his vessel and into the unknown. Lyra was waiting for him. She stood tall, her posture as commanding as ever, but now there was a different energy about her. It was as though the weight of the galaxy rested on her shoulders. Her uniform, once simple and functional, was now adorned with insignia that Kellen hadn't seen before. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, sharp as ever, studied him carefully. "You came," she said, her voice steady. There was no surprise, only a quiet acknowledgement. Kellen nodded, still processing the sight of the massive ship. "You said it was important. What's going on, Lyra?" She gestured for him to follow her, leading him through a narrow corridor. The walls of the ship were sleek, decorated with strange symbols and technology that Kellen could barely comprehend. The deeper they went into the ship, the more alien it all seemed, as though he had entered a completely different world. They finally arrived at a room where a large holographic map of the galaxy hovered in midair, pulsing with lights and markers. Lyra's fingers moved over the controls, and the map shifted, zooming in on various points in space. Kellen studied it carefully, noting the concentration of activity in certain areas where wars had been fought for years. The war, Lyra said, as if reading his thoughts, is just a distraction. Kellen frowned, confused. What do you mean? The galaxy has been in chaos for years. The factions have been at each other's throats. What else could it be if not a war? Lyra turned to him, her gaze piercing. The factions are fighting, yes, but the war isn't the true threat. She pointed to a dark region of space on the map, a vast, empty area where no ships dared to venture. The real enemy lies beyond these borders. Kellen felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about her tone that made his instincts scream. She was hiding something big. I've been watching these systems for years, Lyra continued. They're being manipulated by a force we cannot see. A race older than any of the factions you know. They've been pulling the strings of the galaxy, steering us toward our own destruction. Kellen stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying. But why? What do they want? A total collapse, she replied, her voice cold. They want the galaxy to fall apart so they can take control, and they've been using the factions' greed and desire for power to make it happen. Kellen's mind raced. He had never heard of anything like this. The idea that an unknown alien race was behind the galaxy's wars was terrifying. It was one thing to fight against an enemy you could see, but this was something much more dangerous. How do you know all this? Kellen asked, his voice shaky. Lyra turned back to the holographic map and tapped on several points, causing new data to appear. Because I've seen their influence firsthand. I've been tracking them for years, uncovering their schemes. They've infiltrated nearly every faction in the galaxy, controlling them from the shadows. Kellen blinked, trying to wrap his mind around the scale of what she was saying. So, what do we do? How do we stop them? Lyra's eyes locked onto his. That's where you come in. Kellen's heart skipped a beat. Me? I'm just an engineer. Lyra smiled faintly. You may be an engineer, Kellen, but your skills are exactly what we need. We've developed a weapon, something powerful enough to cut through the heart of their plans. But it needs someone with your expertise to finish it. Kellen felt a wave of unease wash over him. He was used to fixing machines and building technology, but a weapon. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. He took a step back, shaking his head. I'm not a soldier. I don't know anything about weapons. I'm just here to fix things. Lyra stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. You don't have to be a soldier. You just have to be willing to help. The galaxy needs you, Kellen. It needs people who are willing to fight for something bigger than themselves. The weight of her words hung in the air. Kellen's mind raced. He had never been a part of something so important. He had always preferred the quiet life, away from the wars and conflicts. But now it seemed like he had no choice. The galaxy was at stake, and if what Lyra said was true, he was the only one who could help. He took a deep breath, then nodded slowly. All right, what do you need me to do? Lyra's expression softened, but only slightly. I need you to help us complete the weapon. We've designed a system that can disrupt their technology and neutralize their influence. But the final piece is a crucial component, something that can only be built by someone with your expertise. Kellen's stomach twisted. This was more than just fixing a broken machine. This was about shaping the future of the galaxy. He followed Lyra through the ship's halls, to a room where a massive piece of technology lay in pieces. It was a complex array of circuits, weapons systems, and alien technology Kellen couldn't fully understand. But as soon as he saw it, he knew this was what she had been talking about. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. This, Lyra said, her voice quiet, is the key to everything. Kellen stood in front of the machine, his mind working furiously as he analyzed the pieces. There were gaps in the design, complicated gaps. It would take time, patience, and expertise to finish this. He turned to Lyra. This is going to take time, a lot of time. I'm going to need resources, parts, materials, equipment, and I'll need complete access to your systems. Lyra nodded without hesitation. You'll have whatever you need. Just finish it, Kellen. The galaxy depends on it. As Kellen set to work, he realized just how far he had come from his quiet life as an engineer on a remote mining colony. The galaxy was in turmoil, and now he was a part of something much bigger. He wasn't just fixing machines anymore. He was fixing the future. Days turned into weeks as Kellen worked alongside Lyra's team, piecing together the weapon. He still didn't fully understand how it would work, but he knew one thing. It had to. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. And as the final piece clicked into place, Kellen's thoughts turned to Lyra. She wasn't just a soldier. She wasn't just a leader. She was something more, a ruler, a commander of the galaxy's fate. And he was beginning to wonder just how much of her story she had yet to reveal. Lyra stood beside him as he powered up the weapon for the first time. "We're ready," she said softly. Kellen nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The galaxy's wars weren't just about power or control. They were about survival. And the real battle, he feared, was only just starting. The hum of the weapon filled the room as it activated. It was time to face whatever came next. And with Lyra by his side, Kellen knew they would either succeed together or fail together. But one thing was certain, they were in this fight to the end.